My name is Jerry Gill. Today is January 20th, 2010. I'm interviewing Malinda Berry Fischer at her office here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Malinda, thank you for taking time from your schedule to be with us today and participate in the interview. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
I'll give you a little bit of background, okay? Your life has been steeped in Stillwater and Oklahoma State University tradition, and the families of both of your parents are prominent in the history and the heritage of Stillwater and in the state of Oklahoma as well. Both of your parents are prominent in Stillwater and well known. William Edward Berry, your great-grandfather, and his 5 brothers settled in Indian Territory in 1878. William Edward Berry was a successful cattleman, Indian trader, businessman, and co-founder of Stillwater National Bank. Your grandfather, Thomas Nelson Berry, purchased land and mineral rights throughout north central Oklahoma and founded the oil and gas business, Thomas N. Berry and Company, that you are chairman of today. Your father, Thomas Edward Berry, was a wildcatter and entrepreneur. He greatly expanded the business. Your great uncle, James E. Berry, a longtime president of Stillwater National Bank, served 5 terms as lieutenant governor of the state of Oklahoma. And your uncle, William A. Berry, served as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Oklahoma. And on the other side of the family, your maternal grandmother, Malinda Blanche Wise Diggs, was the 2nd female graduate of Oklahoma A&M. So you've had dozens of family members over 4 generations who have been former students and graduates of OSU, highly successful individuals. Wow, is that a tough act to follow? I mean, how do you feel about being part of the family legacy?
Well, we don't really pick where we where we are or where we come from, but it's been a privilege to be intertwined in such a part of Oklahoma A&M. I grew up, it was Oklahoma A&M and Oklahoma State through a lot of years. It's been a privilege.
Malinda, I want to visit with you a little bit further about your family members later in this interview or perhaps in a follow-up interview.
All right.
But first, I'd like to talk about you, if that's okay.
Okay.
You grew up in Stillwater in the late 30s, 1940s, and 1950s. Where did your family live at that time, your parents and you and your brother Tom?
I lived in town at 9th and Adams. Some call that the Berry Addition at that time because it went to the west up where the original hospital was and kind of in that area. As a real little child, I lived at 8th and Monroe. The house is still there. There's pictures of me playing in mud puddles. And I liked mud. We'd smear it all over us. And so I didn't move too far from center. It was only about a half a block where they built the house. It was a brick house. It's still standing. It's in bad repair, but it's still there.
What do you, Malinda, what do you remember about Stillwater when you were growing up? What did kids do in Stillwater for fun and entertainment? Because Stillwater was a fairly small town at that time, was it not?
We had a basement, which was unusual for houses in Stillwater because of the clay soil, but we did have a basement. And in those days, when I grew up, we had the polio scare, and when children did not play out in the heat. So we were given roller skates, and Mother cleared the basement, which had a concrete floor, and we would just roller skate in a circle and for hours at a time, and all the neighborhood kids. We did a lot of playing outside in the neighborhood. My dad would bring in all kinds of animals. We had a cage, and we had everything from possums to squirrels to ferrets to donkeys to worms. We had a worm pit. We used to have a little flooding in the area. You get those gully washers and those crawdads that come out, and we'd go in the water and get those. And I don't know, there never seemed to be a lack of something to do. We used to pick vines and hang them on what had been my little girl playhouse, and we'd play Tarzan. And one of the kids would be Cheetah, I won't say who, and all kinds of stuff like that. I think that nothing was, we went to school and walked to school and took our lunch some days, but usually walked home for lunch.
And
It's very different.
What were the movie theaters in Stillwater at that time?
Well, we had the Aggie Theater, the Leachman Theater a bit later, a Camera Theater, where Hideaway is now, right there at the corner, campus corner. That was a smaller one. The Mecca Theater. That was about it. We loved the Mecca Theater because that's where Hopalong Cassidy and the Three Stooges played on Saturday. That's what they had, Hopalong Cassidy.
And where was that located?
Oh, it's it was on the west side between 7th and 8th, right in there. Maybe a little bit further down.
Linda, earlier we were talking, and you mentioned you had some close friends that you kind of hung out with throughout junior high and high school. Could you share some of those names with us?
Well, some of it was even preschool. I mean, we're talking, that's one of the things in Stillwater. People didn't move around quite as much in those days. It was a different atmosphere. And both of my parents were native of this area, of Stillwater. They were born in Stillwater area. And so we never moved in all of my growing up. And neither did anyone else, it didn't seem, very much. The university was not as transient as it is today. Not that it is transient, but certainly they don't always stay for an entire career from beginning to end. And but anyway, it was Suzanne Fenton Carpenter, as in Fenton Office Supply, that is still run now by the grandsons of the original founder. And there was Francis Mayfield Smalley, and Tim Smalley is the doctor here for many years. He's just recently retired. There was Gill Roberts, and her dad ran the poultry division of Oklahoma A&M at the time. And Lemoyne Britton, her mother, Rena Penn Britton, was very, she was a professor in the art department. And there's a room named for her in the art department. So there were several of us that have remained friends really since first grade. Lynn Pitts was another one of them. You may know Lynn. He played a little football at OSU. And
you graduated from Stillwater High School in 1955?
No, 56.
56, okay.
You're close.
Okay. And can you tell me about some of your activities and honors at Stillwater High School?
Well, you're getting back a long time ago. What all did I do? I did just about everything that was available to do for a young girl at that time. We didn't have physical education, PE, at high school level. We did have it in junior high, but funding didn't allow it. We didn't know the difference. So walked to school every day, which was now we're finding was a good thing. We didn't have school buses that took us to school. Either we were driven by parents or no cars, forget it. You learned to drive at 16, you had to go through. So I took driver's training, went on because nobody else competed to be a top driver of the state of Oklahoma. They had contests in Oklahoma City. Mr. Tilley was I managed to have good grades. That was emphasized within the home, and I was in National Honor Society first pass. I don't know whether that was my junior year, I guess, is when they picked that. I participated in most everything there was to participate in.
Yeah, I recall that you were a cheerleader for a couple of years.
Oh yeah, I was cheerleader a couple of years, but not like today's cheerleaders. No way. We kept our feet on the ground pretty much. I think I was a cheerleader because I had such a loud voice.
What do you remember? One of your favorite cheers?
We didn't do too much other than this rah, sis, boom, bod, kind of silly stuff like that. It wasn't really very clever, but we thought it was pretty good. Saddle Oxford shoes, the socks, the skirts, the big sweaters. I still have the big S with the cheerleader megaphone on it, but I never needed a megaphone. I'm so noisy.
Well, see now, as I recall, football homecoming queen or queen attendant.
I was queen attendant.
Okay,
Patsy Wright Sutton,
Oh,
married to Eddie Sutton, was the football queen.
oh, but then
I was pioneer queen.
pioneer queen.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about pioneer queen. What was pioneer queen?
That was the queen of the school in your senior year, and it was voted in. You were voted in, and I don't know where you're getting all this information, but you must have gone back to an old annual or something. But anyway, I was that, and Patsy was the football queen. I think I'm right about that.
Do you remember any family reunions or get-togethers? Did you come out here to your grandfather or your grandparents' home very often? Do you remember getting together with your cousins and aunts and uncles?
Yes, we came out. I came out usually every Sunday. Mother would drive out. At that time, there was only one road, which was considered Perkins Road. It was not paved. You didn't have the South Main Street that goes by on the other side of it. So the entry point was on the east side. But we would come out, and we were expected to behave. And sometimes we were invited out. My cousin, about my age, we'd come out and spend a night or two here with our grandmother Berry. And that was quite an experience because we got to fish and we got to go to the beehives, and we had some rough experiences with the beehives, and we had chickens and we had black snakes and we had all those things. It was basically a working farm. The chicken coop, it was gardened a lot, and we had all that, and we learned to cook a few things, and we were expected to do whatever we were told to do. I think one of the hardest jobs we had, this house had quite a few crystals in the chandeliers, this home was built in the 1920s, my grandparents' home. And we would be put in charge of cleaning all the crystals. Now, we took each one down by hand, had to lay it out, get it numbered. So I guess we learned our numbers and a few things. So that kept us busy for a day. So everybody was supposed to do their part. She'd usually have grandkids out in 2s and 3s, which is probably very smart because she had quite a batch of them.
Well, you're speaking of the batch. Did like Thanksgiving, 4th of July, Christmas? Did the extended family get together?
All of the 8 children. If they were my grandparents had 8 children, 5 daughters and 3 sons. My father was the eldest son, but the 4th child. So he was the first son, and most of them lived within the region. Several lived right in the Stillwater area. But we would all convene here. Everybody brought something for Thanksgiving. Also, interestingly, my grandmother, even then, Oklahoma A&M had international students. I don't think that well, and we're talking about in the 40s and 50s, even the late 30s. And these international people were limited, but many times at Thanksgiving, she would invite whomever was here at the time out for Thanksgiving, because that's a very traditional American type holiday. And they would be of many various faiths and customs, and most spoke very good English. And we as children were expected to sit and listen to their stories of their birth country. And so they were kind of given, in fact, they sat right where I'm sitting now on the couch, which is right over there. I mean, I can remember. One of the more interesting ones I remember was Krishna Hudazing, and she was Nehru's sister. And later, through some opportunities I had when I was a college co-ed, I went to Bombay, India, and she invited me to her home. And that was kind of unusual because she had been a guest at my grandparents', and So therefore she said, when people extend kindnesses to us, we consider their children our children to care for. And that's why I was invited. And it was quite a story. I'll just go a little further. You can cut it out if you want to. But I'm having dessert, and she did have someone helping, and it was a young man, and all of a sudden this pudding appears for dessert, and of course I didn't know what I was eating any of the time, but I'd ask. I was always pretty inquisitive. Well, there was all this gold on the top, and I'd never seen sprinkles or anything. I'm from Stillwater, America. I didn't know here I am in Bombay, and all this gold on the top, and I said, Mrs. Huddising, now remember, I'm still in my teens. I said, Mrs. Huddising, am I supposed, only mine had the gold on it. And I said, am I supposed to eat this? Yes, my dear. When we welcome our children, we eat the gold.
Gold.
You eat the gold. And it was peeled.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Great story.
Because they have softer gold. Mm-hmm. Why do you cry at something like that? It was just boing, here you are.
It's a special experience.
Yeah,
you get that opportunity to reciprocate. Mm-hmm. Well, you talked about going to India, and we'll kind of pick up on this a little bit later. There's some questions I want to ask about your, later. But you were fairly, is from what I can tell, fairly mature and polished for your age, probably. Going to college. Did you travel with your family? I mean, did you take voice, dance, music lessons, any of these kinds of things for your personal development growing up?
I don't know if you'll remember D. Terry Martin. He is who started Allied Arts. And his wife was Monty Martin. And she was considered herself an elocutionist. Am I saying that right? That would haunt me. And Monty and D. Terry Martin had no children, but they lived in Stillwater, up on College Circle. I can show you the house. It's a mess now, but anyway, it was a fabulous house, very like a little English cottage. And they were kind of eccentric people, very much in the arts. They were friends of my mother's, and I can remember as a young child being taken to, and I called her Monty because she wanted me to, not Mrs. Martin. And she had me saying, "How now, brown cow," and things like that. And Mother said, "Now, daughter, we live in a region and you need to know how people talk differently in all parts of the world." And so perhaps I was learning at a very, very young age about speaking and sitting up straight and all those things because I had my lessons that I was probably under 10 years old. And then beyond, Monty followed me and would tell me that if I did a good or bad job whenever she happened to spot me on something. There'd be a phone call and I'd be put back in the harness if I was not standing up straight or whatever. So I don't know. Those things, you're bringing back memories that are kind of interesting. We did not have, or I realize this now, because I never felt like we didn't have resources in Stillwater, because I just didn't. Children are where they are when they're there. And so parenting was, my mother and my dad were extremely resourceful in exposing us. I think at Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma A&M at the time, I was at a very young age taken to most every theater performance, even though I was too young to be there. And there was good theater at that time. And I was taken to all of the art shows, which are still in the same area as the Bartlett Center. And, I can remember Mr. Reed, Dole Reed, who was the first head of the art department as a young child. And so I was exposed to whatever came on campus. Now, that was the way it was. And my friend Suzanne was kind of the same way. There was several of us girls, and we'd kind of, if one mother was going to be doing that, they'd take the others. And you can call it enrichment programs, whatever you want, but you use the resources that were around you. That's how I would put it.
Did you ever take voice or music lessons?
Well, Mrs. Reed, yes, her house is still here on Duncan Street. I took piano lessons, but I didn't get very good. And no, my voice was pretty bad as a singer. I was a better cheerleader. Mr. Epperly let me go on the trips. He was a wonderful, now his son, is at Tulsa, does great work in music in Tulsa. But he was told, he said to me, Miss Berry, you have excellent volume, but your quality is lacking. And, as a kid, and you just were told straight out, if you didn't hit the mark, you didn't hit the mark. But you're welcome to go with us on our trips as long as you are, there were just so many kids in school, students. So, and so that's how I got to go on the music trips. If I stayed real quiet, I kind of helped him get kids on and off the bus and stuff like that. But I was terrible. I can't sing worth a hoot.
So in the fall of 1956, kind of changing gears, and you can help me here a little bit. You enrolled at Pine Valley Junior College in Wellesley, Massachusetts. Pine Manor Junior College in Wellesley, Massachusetts. Can you tell me about that decision and how did you get from Stillwater to Wellesley, Massachusetts?
Well, my parents had friends in Oklahoma City, primarily in Tulsa, and mother kind of thought, I'd grown up in Stillwater, and so had she, and it was a small environment, and they just kind of encouraged me to apply. They thought it would be a safe place for, their teenage child to go, and I was kind of always game for anything. And I said, well, I wouldn't know anybody. And they said, no, but hopefully you would meet people and become acquainted. And so what they really did, when I reflect back, they pushed me out of the nest. Because had I stayed in Stillwater, there'd been nothing wrong with that. I never would have seen Boston, New York City. I got to go to different Ivy League schools and visit different people. I mean, there were just all kinds of things that happened, and I tended to make reasonable grades, and it was just 1 year. I then had the obligation to come back to Oklahoma State University, or I always felt I did, because it was very clear I was to graduate from college. No ands or buts about it. That was expected by my parents. And I usually fell in line. And my grandmother had been the second woman to graduate, and she was still living until 1960. And so there was no question that I was to come back to Stillwater to get my degree.
So there wasn't any thought that being at Pine Manor was perhaps a stepping stone to going to Wellesley College or another private school?
No, they just thought it would be I had to say yes, I wanted to do it. I was never forced to do anything like that, but I was a little hard to manage at times. I don't know. But teenage girls can be. I've never had any girls, but I got a granddaughter on the way, which is exciting. But I just went for the 1 year, and I think mainly it was just their thought was to give me broader exposure, and it did. There's no question about it.
So you came back then in the next fall, will be the fall of 57, and enrolled at Oklahoma State, which was changing the name from Oklahoma A&M to Oklahoma State University at that time. And do you recall your major, and did you have a minor?
Well, I majored I was in education because, women didn't think they had as many options as they do today. So I wanted to have a teaching degree. And so I was in English education, basically. So it put me in the School of Education. So I took mostly history and English courses.
Okay. Were there some professors or administrators at the university at that time that had an influence on you that you recall?
Well, several had, I'm trying to think of all their names. I didn't get as well acquainted with some of the professors as perhaps I should have, because to be honest, different things occurred that had me gallivanting around to Kansas City, or actually around the world, which I imagine you're going to ask me about later. So being stationary, doing my lessons and being in class, I was in class with great regularity and I made good grades. And there was a Dr. Beers who let me write a paper to get credit when I had to leave for having gotten this opportunity, because my grades were good. Dr. Beers, I can remember him, and that was very, very helpful to being able to achieve my degree. And then I think probably the most influential was actually Dr. Oliver S. Wilhelm. We all remember him. He was the president of the university, and I had gone into his office and was going to be a candidate for an honor which I did achieve, which took me out of school for a year. But before I went on that, he went through my record with me. He called me in. He wanted to be sure that I was grounded for what might befall me. And that was kind of an interesting, I don't know if that goes on today. I hope so. Probably does. And he let me know that I should play to win. That's pressure. And if I didn't, that was okay too. But play to win if you're put in that position. So I didn't forget that. And he was such a gentle man, that was kind of, but again, he was president of the university, so I had to be a little competitive, you know. And the next thing he said was, now, when you're in all this, you're going to be alone a lot of the time. And just remember at all times, first and foremost, you're representing yourself. So you're responsible for whatever actions and what you say and what you do. Pretty good advice when you think of today's world. And he said, and you're representing your family. And don't forget, you're representing Oklahoma State University. And we expect a lot of you. Pressure again. And I said, well, okay. And he said, and I know that your grades are okay. And if you need any help in finishing up this semester and whatever. He might have known something I didn't know. But he was telling me, get your act together, behave yourself. And I never did anything, extraordinary that was going to make the newspapers. And so anyway, that was very good advice.
I know that President Bennett, of course, was deceased at that time. But did you know him earlier when you were
Henry G. Bennett?
Henry G. Bennett, President Bennett?
Yes, and all of his daughters were friends of my parents. In fact, one of his daughters was no, I think I've got my lineage confused. Just give me a second here. Yes, I knew Dr. Bennett. Mm-hmm. And it's indirect, but one of his extended relatives was my godmother.
Okay. Did you ever get
one of the Hope women?
You ever get a chance to know Dr. Bennett at all? I mean, to be around?
I was too young, not real well, but I always knew who he was with distinction. I mean,
sure.
As a kid, but you don't. When you're pretty young, you're not too wired into certain things. But yes, I'd certainly met him.
I want to ask you about your two, competitions, Ms. Queen. But first of all, could you just share some of your activities as a student? Where you live, some of the organizations, activities you're involved in.
I pretty much stuck to the groups in the School of Education and in English in terms of those academic kind of things.
Right.
And then I was in a sorority, Pi Beta Phi. I pledged as a sophomore.
Was that a family thing?
Well, yeah, a little bit. A little bit. My mother was Pi Phi. Several aunts on the Berry side were Pi Phis. We had quite a few that were Thetas on a different prong of the family. So that was, yes, I was a legacy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought I recalled that. Okay.
Yeah. My mother was freshman queen in her day at Oklahoma A&M.
Synthalis?
Yeah, Synthalis.
Synthalis.
Synthalis Diggs. And then I was asked to, they don't have these things anymore, so. And it's not really an organization, but like the Redskin stuff, and they had distinguished students. I'm not sure that's what they're called. I'd have honor, whatever.
There's a Redskin Congratulate?
Yes, Redskin Congratulate. You got it. And I was one of those at one time, and so I got into different things.
You were Redskin Beauty?
Yes.
1958. Redskin Congratulate 1959. Is that correct?
Somewhere in that range. It was before 1960, which really dates me.
Right. Well, the Redskin Congratulate, they're just like a handful of maybe half a dozen or so.
Yeah.
They were listed each year as kind of held up as what we'd call today the outstanding graduating seniors. Top 10 kind of thing.
It was that. Yes, it was. Is
that quite an honor?
I'd say that was the preliminary to that. Yeah.
Did you perceive that as being quite an honor? Proud of that?
Yes. I just kind of rolled with the punches. I say I've been pretty blessed, but I've had expectations made of me, and I try to achieve whatever the expectations are. Some are a little harder than others, but and I have expectations of myself. So.
Malinda, what about student hangouts that time on campus and off campus? Where were some of your favorite places to go to be around other students? Well,
student union existed. That was pretty new then, and it was a pretty nice place and still is. So we would go through the student union, and you'd kind of hang out. In those days, they didn't have these franchises for food. It was a real, maybe when you were there too, a buffet of farm women came in, and it was their job, and they kind of knew you, and that's sort of where you ate. Or I ate at home. I mean, because I lived in the Pi Phi house, but at the same time, so I don't know where I ate. I did whatever the day brought.
Did you spend much time up on the 5th floor? Little coffee shop they had, the little cafe there?
I would get in there whenever I had time.
Off campus, what were some favorite hangouts off campus?
There's Louis Club 40 out now where the Pyramid grocery store is, right in there. There was Aggie Barbecue, which was on Washington. We didn't have what's known as the Strip today. That was Washington Street, but there were a few hangouts, but the Aggie Barbecue, and then there was McCaffrey's Drugstore. Now, I ate hamburgers in there all the time, even starting when I went to Eugene Field Elementary School, which is where Consumers is today. That was Eugene Field's elementary school, grades 1 through 6.
Was Swim's a popular hangout still at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
So, it was just wasn't as crowded with things, but the Aggie Barbecue, it was kind of a drive-in place, and they had good hamburgers. There was Cliff's. Those were good hamburgers.
Did Cliff's then become Ancestor after that? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I guess was the Hideaway just opening up about that
time?
The
Hideaway was just opening in the early 60s and the late 50s. Yes. Richard Dermer was in high school about the same time I was. Yeah.
Did you, in those early years, did you ever go to Hideaway?
Yes, but that gets kind of fuzzy. It was just beginning, so it wasn't quite the hangout it is today. It was getting us. Pizza wasn't that well known. He really rode the crest there with that one. You didn't have all these pizza parlors all around. No, he really did a tremendous job with Hideaway. And he has kept the integrity of what he has, too. It's been interesting.
Well, you had two very special student experiences, Malinda. 1958, you were selected as American Royal Queen, and the following year, the National Maid of Cotton. Can you tell me a little bit about the American Royal competition? What was that, and what was the competition like?
Well, the American Royal is the largest cattle and horse show in this segment of the country. I would say it's kind of Missouri and Kansas, Nebraska, kind of all this middle part. But people come from all over the world there. And the American Royal still goes on today. I was in Kansas City recently in the last 10 years, but the American Royal still is there. And it's just not what it used to be, really a gathering place to learn about, and they would have these judging contests for cattle and horses, and these fabulous animals would be paraded throughout the arena, and all that kind of thing. Well, in addition to that, for publicity reasons, they ask and many universities participated, and Oklahoma State was one that did as well. And because of all of our agriculture that we have.
Judging teams.
And the judging teams, and they trained the kids, and they all slept with the animals and the whole bit. So they had a contest on each university campus, probably to promote the American Royal, for the American Royal Queen. Well, in those days, for a girl, there were just so many things to do. So, today, it's just so different. But anyway, so somewhere along the line, I was put up, I think, by the Pi-Fi House. So this is a thing going on at the student union, and Gerald Bradshaw and Dick Heath were older than I was at the time. Now it's not such a big spread, but they were older at the time. And they were in the Stillwater JCs. Remember that group? Junior, anyway. And several other guys were in it as well. What's his name? Lee.
John Green.
John Green. Sorry, John, but John Green was one of them. And so I was one of the contestants. Well, I won to represent Oklahoma State University at the American Royal for our campus. So I was told that I was to be there on a certain day, and you were told what you were to do. I got the letter out of Kansas City, the American Royal, all that stuff. And then, so of course my parents said, oh dear, how are we going to manage this? So we loaded up the car, my grandmother that I'm named for, my mother, myself, and a chaperone. You had to have a chaperone. And the chaperone was Marguerite Goodpasture Shelton, Jack Shelton, the famed basketball player's wife. So off we went. Now maybe we were in two cars, but I was the contestant, so I about half knew what was going on. The man, but it was left up to us to get there. So we get there. We're at the hotel, Mulebach, I think it was Mulebach. And that was very nice, fabulous. I had never been in a big hotel like that. It was a lot of fun. Well, you'll have to talk to Marguerite because I won it. And, that was sort of, oh dear, now what? Marguerite had two little children at home. hadn't made plans to stay for 10 days. And Mother's is laughing. So then here come my dad for the coronation. He's about to, oh, it's very funny. And my brother. And then he had Eddie Belatti with him. Eddie lives in Bartlesville now. And the Belattis used to run the Stillwater News Press. But they were younger. I used to babysit those two. And anyway, it was just one of those experiences. I was queen of the cows. They kind of leveled me out. And I had my little brother running around and Eddie running around, and they just were having quite a time in that hotel.
See, tell me about the pink Oldsmobile. Did they drive around in a pink Oldsmobile?
They would. You had to be in parades because they had a lot of parades, and the pink Oldsmobile might have been when I was lived out of state for a long time when I got married, but they did have some distinguished Stillwater people, and that I think I went down the main street Stillwater in the pink Oldsmobile, but that was the Leonard's car.
Okay.
So, but I was given when I was made of cotton a Ford station wagon. And I think we did have a pink Oldsmobile. I'm not remembering that real well. What kind of car I rode in the parade, and I can tell you, I had to go through that arena in the back of a convertible every night at the American Royal.
And I'd heard that was a pink Oldsmobile that they drove you around.
Okay, well, I just forgot it was pink. I need to look at a picture.
Great.
But what was worse than that, I came in second. Usually they had a movie star, go around the arena. Now this is a dirt arena, kicking up dust and cows and horses and Stetson hats. And, it was big time Western. But I'm, in my foo-foo dress of the 1950s and everything. And the celebrity they had chosen was the dog Lassie. Remember Lassie? Well, I'm expected to be I am the American Royal Queen for 1957. And so what happened was, kids are in from the farms, from, the huge, all these different states, and the arena is full and everything. And they would start screaming, Lassie, Lassie. And so I'm out there in that arena waving, but nobody's hollering at me. They're all hollering at Lassie. And my father just thought that was great to be upstaged by Lassie. And that's just been it. You may think you're a big deal, but here comes Lassie. So anyway, that was, kids today, there are still the movies. Lassie, you see those old movies. But that's the vintage that we're talking about.
So, Linda, that sort of set the stage then for the following year for your competition for Miss Maid of Cotton. And that was a significant honor. Can you kind of share some about that?
Well, that was in 1959. Okay. And that I was the 1959 Maid of Cotton. So there was that little period, 57. And then I was in school. And then in Christmas time of 58, is when I went to Memphis, and I was asked by the Oklahoma Cotton Council if I would let my name stand as the Oklahoma candidate to go to the Maid of Cotton contest. And the only people, the women, the young girls that could be candidates had to be born in a cotton producing state. I think born, not just lived there, but in a cotton. That was the only. And most states had state contests for getting to go to the next thing.
But if I understand you right, Malinda, in Oklahoma, you didn't have the competition. They just asked.
They had the competition, but in my year, they jumped that step, whoever the powers that be are of the Oklahoma Cotton Council. And I really didn't know. I just got a phone call. And they said, based on your performance at the American Royal, we would like for you to consider being the Oklahoma candidate. We are not going to have if you accept, we are not going to have a preliminary contest this year. Well, that was a little heady stuff.
Well, I started saying, didn't you feel pretty?
What did I do?
Feel pretty special about that,
well,
didn't you?
my mother, it was actually, I can remember, mother was not home. She was in Caracas, Venezuela, visiting Stillwater friends that were there, with, anyway. And so she's there. My father was home, and I went to him and I said, I got this phone call. And he listened and he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're going to do what you want to do anyway. That was kind of, if it's something you want to do, we'll figure it out. We'll get you to Memphis somehow. That's sort of the attitude. Because I was always doing something, kids are kids. You don't know what they're going to do. And so I said, well, you think Mother will care? Oh, no. She's in Venezuela, wherever that is, and we'll somehow manage. And I said, well, okay, I'll tell him I'll do it. He said, do you have anything else better to do, like go to school? And I said, well, my grades are okay. He said, I know. That's why I'm going to let you go. School came first. That was our job at that time. And so poor Mother comes back we didn't have emails and phone calls. You didn't call Caracas, Venezuela and talk on the phone. And so she got home and she's hit with this, and we had, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, I don't know what it was, a little while, and they had certain things you had to do to compete. So we set up a little sewing room in the, I had to wear 100% cotton. That was, who has everything in cotton all at the same time for that kind of thing. So we set up a sewing room in our dining room. And it was kind of a flurry of activity. And a lady came in and, we made sure I had a dress and made sure that I had everything fit me. And I'm sure it was a huge burden on my mother, but I was too young and stupid to realize it. But everything got together, and we loaded up the car and off we went.
It began to sound familiar.
we drove everywhere. We didn't think about going in an airplane. You just didn't do that then. And so that was off we went. And then, of course, it was appearing. And so the phone calls came into Stillwater. We don't have any idea, but it's appearing that she's a front runner. I can remember the conversations. It's appearing, I don't know. I had no idea. I said, how do you know that? Well, daughter, we're just observing. We don't know. And so in swooped several of the aunts with their little hats. I have pictures to prove it. My father appears. They're all sitting there, and it's the night of the final contest. And I did win it. I was narrowed down to the finalist, and I won it. And I did not come back to Stillwater for a very long time after that. Off I went to New York City.
Straight from there,
straight from there. You didn't pass go. You are. First thing happened. We the next morning taken into the American Cotton Industry offices in Memphis. This is how it worked then. They no longer have this contest. It's just not the way the world works today. And they explained in this particular year it was going to be the first time they went around the world. Now you got to remember, jet airplanes and all that kind of stuff was very, very different. And so, but in addition to that, I toured all of the United States, parts of Canada, Hawaii, it was, and to see all of the United States was really something else too. Mm-hmm. So it was, so I was then taken out of school. That was at the end. We had semesters. We took the usually took exams in January, not at the end of, and so our semester exams. So fortunately, my grades were good. I had preliminarily been called in by Dr. Wilhelm. He knew I was going to this contest. That's the one he told me to play to win.
Mhm.
And so, which I don't know. I guess I did play to win, but I don't know what I did. And so then I was able to take my exams with my chaperone, who, by the way, I'm going to visit next week in New York City. She's still living, and we both laugh. This has been over 50 years ago. And anyway, I got off track there. And I was able to take my exams with her being the proctor, that I didn't cheat or anything. And for my history one, I got to write a paper.
Then did you take off in that following semester, the rest of that semester,
Yes.
in that second semester?
All second semester, yeah.
And your travel, was it over a period of a year or 6 months? Or
Pretty much.
Pretty much that next year?
I was on. It was a full year job, and I went back.
Malinda, can you share again some of the places internationally that you traveled to? You talked about the United States and Canada, Hawaii, but Bermuda,
Nassau. Those were hard to get to in those days.
And you actually
And
went,
then England,
Mhm.
Greece, Pakistan, India, Thailand, Japan, Australia. Australia was kind of interesting. We landed in Darwin, and you got to remember what an eye opener for somebody from Stillwater, Oklahoma. I mean, it was
you
just
were
well,
19 or 20 at this time?
yes.
Yeah.
And one of the young men that I had met at the American Royal was from Australia. Now, when I say that, I would go down in my gown and swoop through all these beautiful animals and kind of talk to everybody. I had a great time at the American Royal. And we reacquainted, and then subsequently, a few years ago, since I've moved back to Stillwater, he came through Kansas City. And we met there. My husband and I went, and he was there with his son. And so those very long time experiences, and he pulled out some pictures of me at the American Royal that were just hysterical. But anyway, I said, you mean you had these all these years? Yeah, it was a big experience for him to be in the United States. And he studied, and he bred cattle in Australia for his career. It's very interesting, but some of these people are still living that I traveled with. And it was...
Well, these competitions or conversations suggest that perhaps you're a fairly competitive person. How did these two competitions influence your life and your future? And these are pretty big deals. Most young people didn't have these kind of experiences in their life. Did it impact you in any way?
Well, our provost, Marlene Straith, she was visiting with me, the current provost, and she's a terrific gal, and we become friends, and she really hopes that every OSU student has an international experience. And when I reflect on it, I would say I had an international experience beyond anything you could expect. You could say, sure, it was a beauty queen contest, but it really wasn't. I had to speak, I had to meet people all over the world. And, I have a film of it. Some of it's pretty funny looking now. I did everything from ride camels and get fleas to nearly falling when I'm bowing to the Queen of Siam, which was Thailand. I had experiences that are just, I don't even know how to explain it. When the international trade, I was briefed. We also, when we traveled around the world, had an international economist with us who worked for Cotton Council International. Cotton was a big product, and these things are beginning to be imported and exported all over the world. I had the opportunity in Hong Kong to meet, I I can still see he's deceased now. I received notice some years ago. P.Y. Tang, and he had fled Shanghai in complete Chinese and had resettled in Hong Kong and had all of the cotton there. And I stayed in touch with him and was later at his son. I lives in different parts of the world, but we were at Harvard Business School at the same time. So it's been kind of a generationally interesting thing. When my mother later traveled to Hong Kong, Mr. Tang met her and made sure that she was comfortable. It's been quite an experience, but just to have the exposure to go to these places. The president of the Philippines, I was in the Philippines. So I had, at a very young age, and I always knew after talking to Dr. Wilhelm, before it even started, I was representing myself, and you do have to hold yourself together a little bit when you're going around under guards and all kinds of stuff. You got to take care of yourself and honor, respect your family and Oklahoma State University. So I made sure that came out of my mouth every place I was. Oh yes, she's from Oklahoma State University. I was in all the newspapers. So it was a very enriching experience. I had some scary experiences. But you have to cope with it.
Can you there's some special experiences or stories that you recall about your travels abroad?
Well, I mentioned all of those things, from getting fleas and riding a camel. I can remember in Karachi, Pakistan. I think at that time I had never been exposed to seeing Aborigines people. That was in, and they're just so tall and so stately and so interesting as people. I had never even thought about what it was like to, at that, and of course it's not called Bombay anymore, it's Mumbai. I had never been and suddenly have these flutes playing, and I look out of my window and there's 3 or 4 snake charmers down there waving at me with these cobras coming out of the baskets, just like you see. That's kind of catches your attention. And so I'm asked how many people have been in cages with kangaroos? I don't know that was my best time being photographed, but kangaroos are kind of
like being with Lassie again, wasn't it?
Yeah, kangaroos are kind of ornery little things. They're kind of don't like you in their space, and they kind of they'll get you. They can beat you up. Just, you see, they really can. And I'll never get in the cage with a kangaroo. I got out of there real fast. It tore my cotton dress. And they started yelling at me, get out of there, get out of there. Well, I said, well, you put me in here, So anyway, but I lived through a lot of stuff. And what else were you asking me? The experiences, I hadn't really focused on them in a long time, but they pop up every now and again in my brain. I also have.
Linda, we were talking about your tours abroad as made of cotton. Can you talk about sort of you had like 27 suitcases or whatever, your entourage? Can you kind of describe that? That must have been quite an experience.
Well, we had the old-fashioned Amelia Earhart luggage, which is, of course, today would be considered obsolete and too heavy, but that was the best. And in each suitcase, I didn't supervise this. I was just told what I had to wear on a given day. But designers from all over the world, particularly the countries you're going to, contributed to the clothing that would be used for that year of the Made of Cotton.
Linda, can we back up? That we might have missed one. Was some of this done when you were in New York? You went from Memphis after you wanted straight to New York. Was a lot of that design and as they measured you? Was a lot of that done in New York?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
We stayed at the St. Moritz Hotel. That's right. I don't think it's there anymore. And, or it's called something else now. I'm not sure what. And, yes, all of these various designers had given an outfit, or one would be chosen once they had picked who the final representative was going to be, which is the maid of cotton. And then we had a dressmaker right in there in the room, and all that happened in the course of just 2 or 3 weeks. And then in each country, I would usually go in somewhere and they would have made a certain thing that they wanted shown at some event. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those outfits were custom made on me. Some you could wear. I mean, there's a picture of every one of them on me. And those were sent ahead of time. But I believe it 27 suitcases, every bit of clothing, each suitcase was numbered, and we knew what was in every suitcase. And so when we would travel, the manager for me, Libby Clark, and a secretary, Judith Davenport Mitchner, Sumner, Mississippi, just talked to her over the Cotton Bowl time. They kept track of all that. What shoes went with what. I was just told what to wear. And then it would be that suitcase number that would be in the room. It was very, of what I was going to wear at that stop, whether it be Boston or Des Moines, Iowa, or, that's how it worked. And when we traveled internationally, they changed out. They had American cotton, but many of the outfits were cotton outfits or things made with cotton of that country. And so I would be dressed on the airplane, depending on what the weather conditions were and everything, to get off the plane. Like when we arrived in Karachi, Pakistan, I'm in quite an outfit with mirrors, and it's a fabulous outfit. I think I'm still
Malinda, did you have like charter aircraft, or were you flying commercial?
No, we fly BOAC, British Overseas Airways, primarily in the international flight. But no, we didn't have any charter planes or anything in those countries. We pretty much traveled by car, and we didn't explore the whole country. We just pretty much stayed in the cities or the environs.
Then we were talking off camera a little bit earlier about kind of the purpose of this. You thinking this is more than just being made of cotton. I mean, traveling all across the world. And what was the purpose of the Cotton Council? Were they promoting cotton internationally? Is that what the purpose of the tour was?
At the time of really the whole tour in the United States and other, primarily the entourage very focused on cotton, the commodity cotton. Don't forget, commodities are a big thing worldwide and are today even more. Look what's going on with oil and gas. And we had a photographer that traveled with us internationally, and then just the chaperone. And so there were 4 of us traveling together at all times. It was the international economist that was the first person really out of the airplane. And we flew commercial the whole time.
So a lot of your trips and events, when you were there in the country, was about promoting cotton. It was about exposing.
Yes, it was sponsored
industry
by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Cotton Council International, and the American Cotton Industry. And when we got into a given country, if they had an organization in cotton, those people were drawn into it. So it was actually, when you think about it, it was, I won't say it was the beginning, but it was in the earlier stages of international exchange of commodities. Really, information flow and travel capability and transport capability, when you think how it was 50 years ago as compared today, it's pretty different. And so this was in the early stages of looking at international trade. And cotton is grown in a great many countries.
So Malinda, you returned to Oklahoma State University. Was it the spring of 1960, the spring semester, or did you return that fall in 59? Do you recall?
I'll work on it.
Okay.
I think I came in the fall of 59.
59, okay. Then you
I
graduated.
got back in the summer from the international trip. Yes.
Okay. And then you graduated from Oklahoma State in spring of 1960.
Yes.
Okay.
I did have to go to summer school.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that just to wrap up some credit hours. And so I was lucky. I had enough units to graduate actually on schedule. So in a sense, I went through college in 3 years. I mean, if you put it all together, but I was able to take an exam off-site. And, I will say the university helped to accommodate a kind of an abnormal situation. But I was a reasonably decent student of whatever I was taking at the time. I was not flunking out or anything. So they helped me along, which was appreciated.
Well, could we kind of then maybe back up and look at those first few years after you graduated from Oklahoma State University? Can you kind of share where did you go after you graduated, and where did your
I got married.
Okay.
And was whisked off to the Northeast, and my husband, Dick Fischer, and I'm still married. We're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this year,
Okay.
2010. We went, he was from Buffalo, New York. He had gone to Harvard undergraduate, and he was going to go to Harvard Law School. So we were married at the time he was at Harvard Law School, and yeah.
Just go back. Where did you and Dick meet?
We met actually when he was a sophomore at Harvard, when he was playing hockey for the Harvard hockey varsity team, and I was at Pine Manor Junior College. That's really when we met.
Okay, so when you were at Pine Manor, then that year that you spent in Massachusetts.
I knew Dick for about 5 years before we got married, 4 or 5 years. But,
Okay.
At a big distance.
Well, did you? How soon after you graduated did you and Dick get married?
We got married in June of 1960.
Okay.
So just when we June of 1960, and then I graduated that summer. He came here and worked out in the oil patch for my dad. Decided it'd be better to go to law school.
So then y'all went back to
We went back at Cambridge, Massachusetts, is where we lived the 3 years that he was in law school.
at Harvard there.
Yes.
Now, is that when you did your Harvard Radcliffe?
Yes. Yes. I was a married student then.
Okay.
And I got accepted at Radcliffe for the Harvard Radcliffe program. That's before they admitted women.
The Harvard Radcliffe
Program in Business Administration.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was a really good experience. And then after that, I did a lot. Anyway, we ended up in Rochester, New York, and lived there for 32 years. All of Dick's really legal career was there.
Well, can you share some information about your business and professional activities in Rochester? So you had your graduate degree from the Harvard Radcliffe School of Business Management, and y'all moved to Rochester. You were there, gosh, till 1995, I guess. So
That's right.
So you spent many years there. Can you kind of share a little bit about your activities and what you did there?
Well, I had two sons, which we all have that early adulthood period. I had two sons. I was fortunate to be invited to participate in various civic things. I got acquainted. I was president of several now I'm talking over a stretch of time. I was very blessed in being invited to serve on really more than my share of board of directors. I always tried to participate. I usually was in some leadership capacity, and I don't mean it to sound the way it came out, but I was. I mean, from my resume, I was at one time I served on probably too many boards to be effective, but I balanced a lot, and I also did when the boys were sort of out of the nest, or at least mature. I did a lot of consulting and organizational management and development, and this was for profits and not for profits, and I did that for probably 20 years, and there my office was in my house. If I were consulting with a given organization or institution or whatever, I'd make sure I had a desk and a telephone. We didn't have cell phones, and access to a little help if I needed some clerical support. I didn't often need that, but sometimes I did.
Did you remember some of your clients that you had when you were consulting?
Yes, I had 6 clients at the time I came to Stillwater, and I had to leave, and I felt badly about that. The George Eastman House, that was one. The Al Siegel Center was another. That's they service over 30,000 developmentally disabled. That was a nonprofit. A couple I couldn't do when I was leaving. A lot of group homes. I worked for the YMCA for several years. Many times I'd be asked to do something and then it would extend. So I usually had, when I did the consulting, I was with them for several years, depending on what the needs were.
You served, as I recall from looking through your resume, you were the first woman to serve on the Chase Manhattan Bank in Rochester. Is that right?
Yes. What happened was I was invited to serve on the Lincoln First Bank Board of Directors. And I did that. And that was a great experience. And I was the first woman. Now, am I proud of that? Not necessarily, except I lived the women's movement. Mm-hmm. I have been battled. I had to go on television when I was, say president of the Junior League of Rochester, with the then the National Association of Women, and battling for the rights of women, and which I felt I was very much a part of, just by what I tried to do with my life, but maybe not in the same way. We all may think the same, but we don't always go about things in the same way. And I was told that I was being exploited because I was a volunteer. And that really jerked my chain. And so I just whammed back and I said, well, I don't think so. You're only exploited if you let yourself be. Well, that kind of ended the conversation. And so, I was very much in favor of many of the advancements for women, led the charge with the Junior League, led the charge in other places, and ended up the first woman on more than one board. But the bank board was kind of a big thing at the time, and I didn't really realize it, but it was a very exciting thing. And I'm not real proud there weren't other women, but there are now women. But Lincoln First Bank merged with, or was acquired by, Chase of New York. And then it became Chase Lincoln, and later they dropped the Lincoln and it was Chase. But it was a Rochester bank that I originally went on, and then it went in with Chase, and that was of the Rochester division, so of Chase later. So I was on the board with the presidents of the major companies of the time, Cybron, Bausch and Lomb, Eastman Kodak, R.T. French. I mean, it goes on and on.
It had to be a pretty heady company.
Well, it was very exciting, and and a lot of fun. I learned so much, and I still have some friends. There's 2 or 3 gentlemen that I, to this day, feel blessed that I was taken under their tutelage.
Mm-hmm.
And I never felt shy. If I didn't understand something, I just would call them and say, "What are they talking about?" And they'd say, "Well, where have you been?" I said, "I don't know. I've been changing diapers or something." And so they were great teachers, great teachers.
Surely, Malinda, you've got some good stories you can tell about being the only, the female on the board there for a few years. Some probably some awkward moments, perhaps for the guys, probably more than you. But some stories you remember you can share from that experience.
Yes, I mean, we haven't rehearsed this. I'll give you 2.
Okay.
One of them was when I was invited to serve on the bank board, and I can remember clearly why I accepted. Now that may be surprising. A gentleman named Lou Longi, and he's still living. He's a great guy, tremendous, rough and tumble. He was president of the bank at the time, and he called me up and he says, "Malinda, I want to come to your house and talk to you about something." And I said, and I didn't really know him very well, and I said, "Well, Mr. Longi," I said, "I'm going to be downtown. I can come to your office." I thought, why does he want to come to my house? I didn't know him that well. "Oh no, I want to come out and see you." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be downtown. When are you in your office?" He said, "Anytime you say." So I thought, that's unusual. Usually you have to go through, layer. Well, not. He was a pretty accessible guy. So the next week he said, "Why don't you come in on such and such a day?" I mean, a few days went by, or a week, I don't know, not very long. And I went into his office. I had no idea why I was there. And I sat down. I remember sitting down in this chair. It was a very masculine chair, and I'm trying to be a lady, and I want to tell you something. I had on a skirt, and that thing was so plush that, my legs go flying up because it was too big for me, too big a chair. You know what I'm talking about? Well, I finally got myself positioned so I could sit up straight and, keep my ankles crossed and all those things I'd learned, from Monty Martin probably. And so he said, "Malinda, I'm just going to tell you straight out." He said, "We're interested in having you serve on our board." I said, "Excuse me?" I was just totally unprepared. And he said, "We would like for you to serve on the board." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, it means that you'd be the first woman in our, at that time, 128-year history to be on the board." And I just looked at him. Yeah, I was really stunned. I was stunned. And I said, I didn't know what to say. I mean, I didn't internalize very long. I never do. That's probably my strength, but also a big weakness. I looked at him and I said, "What do you expect of me?" Because I knew if I got a bunch of baloney from all this women's movement going on. See, we're talking 1970s, 80s, right? The late 70s into the 80s. And he looked at me and he said, "Nothing more than I expect from any of the other gentlemen on the board. The same as, nothing more." I said, "You got yourself a deal." Now, had he said, but Lou was a smart one, had he said, "Well, we want you to represent the women and we want you to, all that baloney," not where the women really wanted to go, but at the time wasn't. He didn't do that. He expected the same thing of me. So I said, "You got yourself a deal." He said, "You got any more questions?" I said, "I'm sure I do, but I'm so stunned, and I appreciate your confidence in me. And I have to just think about this for a while. When's the first meeting? Oh, we meet on the 26th. And he told me, well, women had never been on the 26th floor of this building. Okay. So the day comes around, my first meeting. Well, I'm pretty nervous. I will admit I am pretty nervous. So I don't know if you want to hear the whole story, but it really is history of America. Lou could not be at the first meeting. He was taken out of town to New York or something. But that was okay because, he had all of his people and everything. And I knew he wasn't going to be there. And I'm thinking, boy, how am I going to handle this? But he was coming in late. He just couldn't go in with me. I'm sorry, I misspoke a little bit. He was going to be there at the latter half of the meeting. And so I get on the elevator, and they had this gentleman who was very, very Italian. Rochester had a very large first-generation Italian population. They had a very large German population. They had a very large, various ethnic groups, Polish and everything. And I can remember, he's a terrific guy, and we get on the elevator, the two of us, because always their new board member, they are escorted the first time to the meeting. I mean, that was just their custom. It wasn't because I was female. It's just the way they do it because, you got to find your way, know which elevator to get on and all this stuff. So we're going up the elevator, and I'm just kind of standing there, and he looked at me and said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "Don't worry about it. I'm the first Italian that ever touched the 26th floor." He says, "You'll manage." We're friends forever. And I thought, it just hit me. I never thought that way about an Italian. I just never had, it just wasn't. But I thought, oh, things are changing in America, But where it really changed, I get up on the 26th floor, and they always serve lunch up there. That you had the boardroom, and they served lunch. And there were all of these different women kind of standing around in their aprons. They wore the little white aprons, and they were the waitresses for the lunch that would follow with this board. And I just said hello to them, and my Italian friend started laughing. He said, "Boy, they're excited to have you up here." I said, "Oh." And so it was time for the meeting, and I'm getting ready to walk in, and they cheered. And they put their hands up like this.
The maids now?
And they said, "Go for it." And I thought, oh my. And then it hit me what I was doing. I hadn't really, I'm still pretty young, and I just kind of caught my breath, and I thought, they're depending on me. I got to do my lesson. And I'd been taught my whole life, you got to do your lesson. And so I walked in the door. The door was closed. And when I came out, they were all there. And I looked at them, and I said, "It went okay." And they said, "You'll be served first, Mrs. Fisher." And I said, "Just call me Malinda." And I said it was a big day. So that was one story. The second story was Dr. Chapman. Dr. A.K. Chapman was the emeritus and well-known president of Eastman Kodak. And I can tell you things he did in World War II with his chemistry and all. But anyway, he was a very interesting, dynamic, flamboyant person. Brilliant. And he had his place. He always sat at every board meeting. We're at lunch before he was unable to come. And he's sitting across from me. And the president of the bank, Mr. Longi, was sitting to my right. And Dr. Chapman looks at me and he says, he talked with a funny voice, "I don't know why you're on this board. We've gotten along just fine with women. And I don't know why, Louie, why is she on this board? Tell me, Mrs. Fisher, what are you going to do for us?
We're talking about a challenge.
And I think Lou Lange was holding his breath, that he didn't know what I would say. And I just looked at him and I said, Dr. Chapman, I'm going to try to do as well as you have done. And if I achieve that, maybe it'll be a success. Lou just relaxed. I just know he was thinking, oh, thank goodness she didn't just hit him over the head. And Dr. Chapman looked at me and he says, my dear, that's a pretty good answer. Maybe I can live with it. And then a few more meetings went by and he patted me on the shoulder. You know, the women all hated the pats, but I didn't care. He patted me on the shoulder. He said, I think you're doing okay. And that was the supreme compliment.
High praise, high praise.
So you did have to take it. And I never got too excited about it. And I never felt, back to what I was saying earlier about that TV interview with the woman with now, I never felt I was being exploited. At the same time, I tried to do my lesson and to deliver where I was expected to deliver. It was not easy, and you spend a lot of lonely time trying to figure things out. But anyway, it's been a fun ride, and I've had a good time.
Yeah, one other experience I want to ask you about is I think you served as development director for the Eastman Dental Center for 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, they hadn't had a director of development and they wanted to raise some money. Mm-hmm. And so I was asked if I would do that on any time frame. Mm-hmm. And I had agreed to do it. I found consulting worked better for me than taking the position. I liked being a consultant better because it gave me much more flexibility. Mm-hmm. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, and my mother was not well at the time, so it got kind of complicated. But that was several people I knew were on that board, and that was a very good experience. That group has now merged with the University of Rochester.
Linda, you returned in 1995. You and Richard back to Stillwater. Mm-hmm. Was that what brought that about? Well,
the company, Thomas and Berry and Company, and Marietta Royalty Company. I had 2 uncles who were still living at the time, Bill Berry and Jack Berry, and they kind of gave me the pressure, and they felt, I won't say they were aging out, but I'm aging out now, so you kind of take your turn. We've been very lucky that this company was incorporated in 1937, and I got calls from various ages of shareholders. It's a very closely family-held company, and every company has its personalities and things. And when my father passed away, I came as a shareholder.
What year was that, Malinda, when he died?
He died in 1977, and I think everything was transferred right in around that time, 77 to 80, right in there. He died in 77, and so I started coming regularly to the annual meetings. Mm-hmm. I wasn't on the board of directors. I didn't live in town, and and my brother was on the board here, which represented our family, and that was fine. And but I did do a project for them, for the company at a distance. I was calling all over the country to these different shareholders, and so it was just sort of a generational, transitional time. And now all of the original siblings are gone. They're deceased. And it's a different makeup. It's all cousins.
Well, I want to ask you that in a minute, but first of all, did you come back with the idea in mind, or with the understanding that you'd be president and CEO and be managing the company?
I came to the annual meeting, and I had agreed that if elected, I would do it. At that time, we hadn't formulated that we would move to Stillwater. I maybe could have done it from Rochester. It was my husband that encouraged to move here. We were going to give it 5 years. We've now been here 14, but we were going to give it 5 years, and we weren't sure. Really, what I had to do with the company was kind of reposition it for the future. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying we're there, but we're still here, which is, thank goodness. The oil and gas industry takes a lot of ups and downs, and got all computerized, and thanks to the great help of our accountant, who's now been with us almost 14 years since I came. So it's been a labor of love on my part.
Well, let me kind of press you just a little bit. Can you talk about the company, your responsibilities, and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities? I'm sure that this was a time of transition in the energy business. Your leadership was a transition. And I've got to guess that, well, it's a good news, bad news story and all the family and cousins, but is it sometimes kind of tough to keep all the interests together? But could you speak about some of that, your transition in the leadership and the transition in the company?
Pardon my drippy nose. I've never had too hard of a time. That's a kind of a hard question. I didn't come back with very many expectations. I just sort of have my inner rules, and I'm not sure what those are. But I knew that communication had to be key. And when you're dealing with shareholders that have varying degrees of interest, varying degrees of knowledge about the industry of which the company is in, I had adequate knowledge, not super knowledge, but adequate, because of my business school experience, because of my travel experiences, because of my volunteer leadership experiences,
banking and finance,
bank experiences. I was very blessed, and so this was kind of so lonely the first 5 years, because I lost all of my friends, all of my contacts, all of my years of experience in one community, with Dick being, one of the managing partners of the law firm. It was a whole different life. So the first 5 years I was here I can't say they were easy years for me, because I had so much to do right here, and you don't talk about what you're doing because it's nobody's business. And I still don't. But like, I have people today say, do you really go in every day? Well, yeah, I do. It doesn't mean that I have to do a whole lot every day, because I don't. I'm the first to admit, as chairman, but I do, just because I do everything out of the office. I'm talking to you in my office. I do all my civic work. I'm whatever. But dealing with a family company, I had very good advice from Mr. Sporandio, who now you see PetSmart, that franchise. Well, his family in the Rochester area, and I was consulting of a board, he ran a family company. And when I knew that I was going to be doing a family company, I went to him and I said, I'm being asked to run a family company. It's not with the pet business, and I knew he was going to sell out. But I said, what do you do? How do you start? And he started laughing. He said, well, you better get a survival kit. And anyway, so we had a nice visit. And then he pulled out, and I can show you the whole set. I have a full set since I've come here. It's called the Family Business Journal. And it's a little newspaper thing put out every month. It now all comes on computer. And it's just about family businesses all over the world. real simple to read, real easy. So he said, just take it. It costs you $100 a year, but just take it and read it. And I said, well, that's a good idea. Now, I'd had a book or two. You know, we always passing books around about family businesses. Well, what this little journal does, we now send it to our whole board, but what this little does, it tells you of different problems, issues, good things, bad things that family companies deal with all over the world. So when you get into a little nit within your board, and if my brain clicks in, and it clicks in less and less these days, that, oh, that's not just our problem. That's other people. It's not a new problem, is what it is, or an issue. It doesn't always have to be a problem. So I'll go to this little, I'll show it to you before you leave. I go take a look, see if anything on that issue is in there. And family businesses have issues that aren't always business. And it's very helpful because then I can come back and say, by the way, in the Family Business Journal, did you know that so-and-so in Spokane, Washington is having the same problem or same issue? Here's what they did. Here's some ideas. Gives you great thinking points. So I think with family business, the one thing I've learned is there'll always be things arise. They'll always be different depending on which people are talking about it. But somewhere there's an answer, and you neutralize the emotion that if you can go and read this Family Business Journal. So for that, I'm forever grateful. It was called to my attention by a friend in Rochester before I left to take that, and it's come in real handy. I won't say it's the answer, but I will say it helped me a lot.
Linda, you talked about leaving your friendships and your lifelong connection, I guess, for 30 plus years in Rochester. Can you talk about your engagement or your re-engagement, if you will, in the Stillwater community, your return to your roots in your hometown and your home university? What was that like for you?
I never thought...
You said lonely at one time.
Well,
you had in the business 5 years, but did...
Well, who wrote it? Thomas Wolfe, You Can Never Go Home. Mm. Well, some of them are deceased, varying degrees of senility. You know what I mean? It's just, it's life. I had no expectations. I'd have people say to me, why are you here? Like I'd been a big failure. And I just say, well, I'm working out at the company. It was because I felt an obligation. You grow up in a company like this where your dad, was involved with it.
Your grandfather.
For some reason, I was asked. I don't have any real reasons, but I've always felt there's a certain obligation you owe to your past. Some people don't have that same feeling. But I think also my husband was, he was ready to make a change. He's a tax lawyer, he was really quite successful, and I don't mean that way, but anyway, it's the bottom line. And we could afford to move here, and with everything that had gone on in our lives for the past 30 plus years, and we were lucky people. And he has always liked Stillwater. He loves to play golf. He taught here for 6 years at the School of Business, as an adjunct professor, not a full professor or anything. He's part of the Oklahoma bar if he ever thought he'd do anything, but he kind of likes not being the whipping boy with tax law. And so we've really enjoyed being here. As far as reconnecting, sure, you reconnect with friends that you haven't been around in a long time. I always came back to high school reunions when I could. But I've made a lot of new friends since we've been here. And after I'd been around about 5 years, I got involved with helping out a little bit with OSU and have done several things there, which have been nice opportunities. Complex, but nice. And I met a lot of people through that I wouldn't have. So I've had an enjoyable experience. I've been invited to serve on a couple of boards out of here locally, but also out of Oklahoma City. They're statewide agencies, and that's been nice. So,
Oklahoma Heritage Association.
Heritage Trust Company, that was, I am on that board, and that was an interesting linkage. Nancy Payne Ellis was actually chairman of the OSU Foundation Board, of which her father-in-law, Mr. Payne, had started in the about 1960, 61, I think, is the history of it. And anyway, I was on the board of governors or something, and she came up to me and she said, we do know each other. You do remember. And it had really been a long time. So we pieced, and my dad had done work with Mr. Payne. He was Big Chief Drilling. And so anyway, we reconnected through OSU. And had I not been doing that a little bit, and so we reconnected, and then also she had been in the same sorority I'm a little older than Nancy, but the same vintage. So one thing led to another, and my resume and everything, and I was then invited. It's been almost 10 years now. I was invited to serve on their board, and I continue to have a nice experience. And now Bond Payne, her son, is giving some time to OSU Foundation.
You moved into some leadership roles with the foundation. I know you were, in addition to being on the board, you were chairman, which is the chief volunteer position for the foundation, chairman, and then you were interim for about a year, I guess, there as interim president and CEO when they made a transition from Ron to the next CEO. What do you remember? What some of the challenges and what some of the opportunities were at that time when you were moving into a leadership role in the foundation?
Well, I was serving on the board of directors of the OSU Foundation, and I was like vice chair, or whatever you call it, not vice chair, but yeah, vice chairman.
Vice chair.
And the chairman was Ross McKnight at the time. And he and Kirk Jewell called me and asked if I'd come in to see him, and I did. And they asked if I would serve as president and CEO. And I said interim, because how am I going to handle my company? It was kind of a hard time. But in the meantime, I had become chairman of this company, and a cousin was president, so you got to work on these transitions. So I agreed to do it for an interim period, not knowing how long that interim would be. It was, I fortunately had a little experience being on the board. I was familiar with some of the employees at that moment in time, not all, of course, and had some knowledge, but I really was relying to pull me through it on my consulting experience. So I felt this is where they needed to be helped out a little bit for now. So I accepted to do it, and it was about a year. When it was time for the natural change of officers, is when I felt, and then I rolled in and became chairman of the board, and I only took that for a year because I felt like maybe I'd been around long enough, and I didn't want Monty waiting, and anyway, so it all worked out, and here we are now. We got Barry Pollard as the chairman, and
you had a wonderful experience as the chief volunteer officer, and then the chief paid officer for the foundation.
Kind of unusual.
And that close together, very unique. Well, look at your experience in those two positions, but also your time on the board of trustees. You look back, some highlights, some special experiences. I think during that time, was the Bring Your Dreams to Life campaign.
It had just ended.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wasn't a part of that campaign,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
but it had ended, and they were very successful with it.
Mm-hmm.
And may we be as successful with the next campaign.
How do you feel about that? I understand it's going to be announced here fairly soon, maybe as much as $1 billion campaign. How do you feel about that campaign coming up?
Well, I'm not really wired in on all of the management of it, but let's hope it's successful, because I think we don't have any choice. If we're going to keep advancing, the good things that OSU does, I think with all of the building going on our campus, we got $500 million. Isn't that what it is, of just new buildings?
Yeah, about 700 million, I think,
Right.
online, current and online, coming online.
It's close to $1 billion. Of course, Washington throws around the word billion, so I don't. But to me, that's a lot of money. $1 billion is a lot of money.
So it's the expression, failure is not an option in the
Failure
campaign.
is not an option. That's Susan B. Anthony. And she, by the way, was in Rochester.
Oh.
Yeah, that's Susan B. Anthony House is there. I did a little consulting for them.
Back into kind of the conversation, can you recall your years on the Board of Trustees and in your officer positions? What are some things you feel good about? What are some of the significant achievements, accomplishments, goals of that era?
At the OSU Foundation?
At the OSU Foundation, when you were part of the trustees and in an officer role.
Well, that was 2004. I mean, that was.
But you were on the board for about 8 or 9 years total,
Yeah.
were you not?
Yeah.
During that period.
Well, I would say that the need for private dollars to a state university has, quadruple is probably the wrong number, but really, Jerry, it used to be that you didn't need private funding at Oklahoma A&M because it was a state institution. It was a land grant university. And they would bring in money, better than I, for grants for various research in veterinary medicine or, agriculture and all of that with the USDA. But state dollars came in. Now it's my understanding that state dollars are about 30%. So hopefully during the tenure, there has been a lot of effort done to reposition OSU so that it's in a position to do fundraising, both private dollars, but also the grants like from NIH or all of those things, to have the skills to deliver the background and the paperwork that's necessary for that kind of thing, because that's very important for the viability of it. Also, there seems to be an increased need for scholarship money for students to recruit the best and the brightest as best you can from all over the world, for that matter. And I think that the awareness of what was going on to recruit these students, where our university, really Oklahoma State is, in terms of private fundraising compared to other schools, hasn't done it that long.
Right.
Now, yes, we've been doing it always. People give to their alma mater, but not to the degree that it's done today. And a lot of that is just good old-fashioned awareness, public relations, so that people, they have their desires of what they want to perpetuate, but also there's various needs, and she'll be continuing new needs of the university in research and whatever it is. And so hopefully during the time that I served on the board, we came up with ways to remain nimble and make it possible that the foundation and the university together, I'm not isolating them. I don't think one entity is responsible for all fundraising. I think it takes the deans. I think it takes students. I think it takes awareness. I think it takes your president is your lead. I think it takes everybody that's working with that institution at that time. And it's hard to manage, really.
And part of the contributions of your trustees, I think I hear you saying at that time, was perhaps structuring and organizing a little bit internally to help support the fundraising components. And
Yes, another thing that I think is always my hope, and I don't want to say, because you never do any of these things alone at an institution like a foundation or the alumni center. It kind of takes the whole group. But to me, the philosophy should always be where you have these various cubicles in a larger entity that is really there to serve the university that it's representing. So you have a lot of development officers, and they tend to be younger, sometimes new to all of this. And I try to always say, be sure to do your lesson, know about the people that you're talking with, and just as importantly, understand the topic that they're talking about. If you don't know, you should say you don't know, and then you need, back to what way I grew up, go do your lesson. Get the help you need to be. You don't have to be sophisticated, but you better know what you don't know. And because you really have to honor, what's going on. That'll never be always done to perfection for every single person. We know that. I mean, I still yap at them about different things. But at the same time, I think communication and also the different areas within the foundation that have various responsibilities, everything from record keeping to talking to the prospective donors to this. To me, it's everybody has to kind of know what everybody else does so they understand the total of what's going on. And I just hopefully got in place that that's something that always needs to be worked on. It's not just done and that's the end of it. And you have to constantly be training and bringing in new people, and some of your best people leave for whatever reason. And I don't think that's going to change with something like a foundation or an alumni. So you have to be pretty open and pretty nimble and welcome new ideas. But an idea is only as good as its implementation. So sometimes ideas just aren't so good. You can't get them done.
There's Dick Poole, former Vice President of University Relations Development and Business Dean before they says it, he used his expertise. Oh, hell, he said, anybody can have a good idea. He said, execution's what it's all about.
Right. And there's just, sometimes at a place like the foundation, there's just too many ideas. But the important thing is that you know what they are. You keep working on them in bits and pieces in a timely fashion. I would get frustrated with the lack of timeliness from time to time, but that's nothing new, and that's just probably best. Then you make a better decision.
And how do you feel about the leadership of Burns Hargis? Well, Burns and Ann Hargis, his wife. How do you feel about them as a leadership team?
Well, I think they're pretty sparky. I think, first of all, I think they have a real good time doing it. And I think that they care about OSU a lot. But I think more importantly, they also, not necessarily more, but more importantly, they care about the community in which Oklahoma State sits. And I say that as recent as yesterday, Ann Hargis was sitting right in the seat right here where you are, and she had stopped in. We had a group because, Stillwater is working toward expanding already the success of its Museum Without Walls, and i.e. the Stillwater Children's Museum, better known as the Oklahoma Wondertorium. So Ann is on that board, and she cares that it happens and becomes a success because, after all, it's just the synergy that goes on by having things for children in the recruitment of new professors or whatever for Oklahoma State. They care that their children have things to do and see and be part of in the community in which they live. So, there's all of this stuff feeds on itself. And the fact is, when you are a citizen of Stillwater, Oklahoma State University definitely has a presence. And so I think that they care a lot and do what they can. They don't have a schedule. The schedule just dictates where their schedule is whatever it is of the moment and the priority. But I find that they're both quite accessible. I wouldn't put in an unnecessary phone call or email to them, but I can tell you when I do, I get a response. And I'm not alone with that. People are talking about it. So I think they work their tails off for Oklahoma State. And I think that they care about it academically and personally and all aspects. So I hope everyone allows them to get acquainted. It's hard to move into a town like this.
Lynn, how do you feel about the future of Oklahoma State University right now?
I feel pretty positive. I think it's with Ross McKnight and Billy McKnight leading the campaign. They'll give it their best shot, and they care a lot about it. And so I should think the future is bright. More and more people are needing education. You're always going to have to, I think we should stick to what we do best, and like the veterinary school, I think, the agricultural component, you have to be able to grow our own food and know what things do, and I think our future is quite bright. And you certainly have some loyal alums, and you've nurtured that along the way, and that's important.
It is. It's part of the total picture.
Absolutely. There's not one facet to it.
Malinda, does your kind of change the subject a little bit back to your family and kind of your perception, does your family heritage form part of your passion for giving back to Stillwater and OSU? I mean, is it part of your spirit for giving back?
Oh, sure. I mean, OSU and Stillwater, I've always considered myself from Stillwater, Oklahoma. I used to say North Central Oklahoma when I lived in the Northeast.
They had no idea where Stillwater was in Minnesota.
Stillwater used to be really centrally isolated. It still is today, but I got to say I-35 and 51 and all those do make a big difference. It used to just be 33, so to get to Oklahoma City. So, no, I'm pretty loyal, but it just dates back so many generations that I don't know any different.
That's kind of where I was going. It's sort of ingrained because your family has given, and I'm not talking about just necessarily financially, I mean their time and their talents and leadership over 3 and 4 generations now.
Right.
And it just do you sense and feel a part of that legacy and that history of being engaged and involved in giving back?
Yeah, probably. It's a sense of responsibility. Some family members do it more than others, depending on where they live in the state or what their opportunities are or their interests. It's just that, again, I've been blessed with perhaps more than my share of opportunities, but hopefully I've met the responsibilities as much as I could. I'm still going. I hope.
Well, you're a business executive. You manage 2 companies. You have a degree in business, yet you're passionate about the arts and history. Why? Where does this come from?
Well, I think business is wonderful and has a lot of history and a lot of legacy, but I do think that the history of the world and of people you do find through art, through music, through museums. It's sort of it's the collective memory of the world. So if you can capture it in the area in which you live, then it's hopefully you're helping to preserve a little something. So I commend you on what you're trying to do for Oklahoma State and the families that have been a part or touched by or have touched one another.
Could you share a little bit some of your activities in the arts and humanities and museum work and that you've done here in the Stillwater area and statewide?
I'll try to.
Okay.
If I don't have something in front of me, sometimes I forget. I guess I'm creeping up on age here. I was chairman of the Sherrar Museum, which I enjoyed earlier when I was in the early 2000. I served on the Oklahoma Arts Institute, which offers opportunities to high school children and adults, at Quartz Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Some know it by Quartz Mountain. I have given a scholarship for teaching, an endowment, which is for teaching excellence in the arts for a tenured professor. And it was named for my mother and grandmother, who both, of course, went to Oklahoma State. And that's given for excellence in teaching in theater, music, the painting or drawing, the arts, we mean in that way, poetry, any form of that type of things. I also, and my husband and I established the Thomas E. Berry, named for my father, professorship in the College of Agriculture, and it's on water resource management. He had been a long time promoter and advocate, although he was in the oil and gas business. He understood Oklahoma's needs for water and all of that kind of thing. He had several experiments that he did on some of his land with the university. So when the match came through, and that one has been funded, I'm very pleased to tell you. There's a staff there to do it, and so that's one of the professorships that's up and running. And I appreciate the match that we received from Boone Pickens, and appreciate the match from the state of Oklahoma. So that at least mine's in place.
Linda, you've also, I think, have served on the board of the Oklahoma Heritage Association. Is that right?
No, not the Oklahoma Heritage Trust Company,
okay.
but not the Oklahoma Heritage.
I thought maybe you'd served.
We're a member of that,
okay.
But I haven't served on that board.
Okay.
I serve on the Communities Foundation of Oklahoma and the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. That might be the other Oklahoma one that you're. Those are their main headquarters are in Oklahoma City.
You've been in so many. I contributed. If I attribute something you didn't do, just take it with a grain of salt. What are the? This is a serious question now. What are the one or two things about Malinda Berry Fischer that most people would not know and might perhaps surprise them?
Oh dear, I don't know. I can't really answer that question. What would surprise them?
What is it most people would that don't know you real well wouldn't know about you, and might surprise them?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe sometimes I appear I don't take things too seriously when really I do. I can be battered pretty fast. I'm pretty sensitive. My husband knows that. I get kind of overwrought over nothing. Some little nit. Like I say, I get a little too picky sometimes. And maybe I have formulated in my head I want something just a certain way. And, about 100% of the time it doesn't turn out that way. But I've never gotten over that. But I try to do my lesson, like I said. And I will admit, I don't think people know how much lonely time I do spend. I tend to kind of say too much sometimes at meetings. I wish I didn't. It gets me into trouble sometimes. But I do try to do my lesson and contribute. But I don't know. I kind of, with me, what you see is what you get. I usually, if you ask me a question, you'll get more of an answer than you want.
And would most people see you as competitive? And as one of known you fairly well for the last few years, anyway. I was surprised as I look back in your record. I mean, not surprised, but it was interesting to see your competition of Native Cotton, American Royal Queen, Pioneer Queen, Redskin Queen, Redskin Congratulate. These are competitive kinds of things. And I suspect the only reason you probably weren't a high school athlete is because they didn't have girls athletics when you were going through Stillwater High School. Is that a fair assessment? Are you a competitive person?
Probably.
Yeah.
I never thought a whole lot about it, but, as Dr. Wilhelm said, play to win. Well, what else you have to do in life? If you don't win, where are you going to be? Now, I don't mean winning has to be the top, but what you want to be is knowledgeable, well-educated, inspiring to others if you can be, to take new challenges with the fun that they can be rather than, oh, woe is me, I don't know anything. One of the best lessons I learned was from a high school American history teacher, and the exam was coming along, and I was a pretty good student. I've said that before, but never the top, but I was always in the top part. And the exam was handed out, and I didn't know a single answer, and I went flying up to his desk, and I said, Mr. Murphy, this is the wrong exam. And he said, Miss Berry, you just settle down. This is an open book exam, and the answer is in this room. And you're going to learn in life, it's not always knowing the answer, it's knowing how to find the answer. And you better get to work or you're going to fail the test. Now, today, that would probably be abusing your student. Boy, did that put me down. I made a B- on the test because I wasted all that time twitting. But I've never forgotten what Mr. Murphy said. You may not always know the answer, but you better have the sense to learn how to find the answer. So I think that's probably something people don't know about me. I'll just kind of dive in. I don't dive in and swim out. I will dive in and have just enough knowledge to be dangerous, but I may have to get more information before I can get out.
You go down twice, but you come up that third time.
Right. So I would say that when I say, and that's lonely time, I'm sure you've done it. I'm sure anybody that has had to be a chair of anything has to spend that time to be sure that you have a sense of the direction that you want to go and know the personality of whatever it is you're trying to manage. So I try to do that.
It seemed, I sensed that a couple of things, Melinda, that come out in our conversation revolve around discipline. We talked about from your parents, do your lesson. Now, this might be something that wouldn't surprise people as much, but the depth of it is that fair assessment? Say, as we talked about your life, when you're growing up as a child, and talking about your parents, what they taught you, and later in life, that you do your homework, you do your lesson, you have disciplined yourself, you've done the hard work. Is that a fair assessment? That discipline has been a part of your success?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for saying it's success, but I'm reasonably disciplined. Mm-hmm. My boys used to, and I, you learn from your kids. These little faces would look at me and they'd say, Mom, what am I doing today? And I remember the first time, and I'd say to them, well, it's whatever you put together you're going to do today. No, you tell us, what are we doing today? Well, it dawned on me, I had been telling them, now we're going to get up, we're going to have breakfast, the school bus will come, and finally it dawned on me, I have that discipline that every day, like I woke up this morning and I'm yapping at my husband. Now don't forget, so-and-so's coming at 9:00. Jerry Gill's going to be with me tonight. I can't be here. Don't forget all this stuff. He finally said, I got it, and walked out of the room. And so I think I'm a little overprogrammed sometimes. So that if that's discipline, I try not to miss a beat with whatever the game plan is for the day. And tonight I know I have to be at the basketball game and in the seat before 8:00. So I do kind of try to figure it out.
Different subject, a little bit. Oklahoma State University. Can you share some of your favorite OSU memories? And there's got to be, as a student, later in life, recently, just you look back some events that stand out in your life, in your relationship with Oklahoma State.
Well, we always had a lot of fun. The students didn't leave campus on the weekends like they do today. And so there was really kind of a lot of stuff going on, kind of hanging around and talking, and, it wasn't necessarily dates or anything, but I don't know, we seemed to always have a lot to do. Just in general, I never felt, of course I was from Stillwater, so I was always at home here, but at the same time, I can remember I was in the Pi-Phi house, and the Sigma Nu house was next door, and they were getting ready to have their Frontier weekend. Well, we had at my house a pet crow, named Crow, of course. It was my brother's pet. My brother's 5 years younger about. And that crow would follow the cars. And it had followed me. I'd been home, and I'd driven back to the Pi-Phi. Well, the guys are out, and Crow had come down where they were sitting around the fire. And I'm hearing out the window that they were going to roast Crow. You know how, well, I know this sounds nuts. But anyway, so I went barreling down. You're not going to eat my brother's crow, and, all this stuff. And then they started haranguing me. I was really almost in tears. I ran in the house. I said, Mother, fortunately she is home. There weren't cell phones in those days. I said, get Tom up here. I can't get Crow to come to me, but he can. And she said, what do you mean Crow's up at the Sigma Nu house? I said, they're going to eat him. They're going to eat him. She said, they won't eat Crow. They're smarter than that. Meaning she's doing a play on words, and I didn't even get it. And anyway, because my dad and brother it was a Sigma Nu. And so my brother, she comes up, probably got picked up by Cyclone Sam. I don't know. She zooms up in her car. Tom jumps out, and he's a little scrawny thing. Goes over to the campfire. He says, and Crow was there and flew over and got on his shoulders. Well, did that shut those guys up? I mean, now that was a town university scene, but it was a scene. And, crows are real smart. And since we've been back, there was a woman doing a study on crows, putting stuff on them. I don't know what all happened. It was some research project. But that was really kind of a dumb experience that you didn't expect to hear about. But, sometimes you just have to protect your animals from the fraternity boys. And actually, we always had a good time with homecoming. But we used to stuff that crepe paper, and it was nothing as fancy as it is today. I don't know how they do it, but
the floats were much bigger than the house decorations.
Floats were a lot bigger, yeah, and they were crazy. I mean,
So
that part was always a lot of fun, and the walkabout wasn't quite to the magnitude it is today, but there just weren't as many people that came in for it. But it was. We always had a good time. Everybody seemed to kind of know each other. It's always been a friendly campus. And, I'm trying to think, Yost Lake was always a destination, both as a kid and in college. Yost is still out there, but it's a little more private family thing. And it always was. It just seemed a little rowdier than it is now.
You go to Horse Thief Canyon?
Yes.
Good times there.
That was a crazy place.
Any details you want to share with us?
No, but it is kind of a scary place. And when you look on the maps of the Berry brothers, which we'll do another time, that was all down in there, those dugouts. That place is for real. I actually have a painting of it that Connie Katzkus did. And Ron Walker was... Anyway, I'll show you a picture sometime. I have a painting at my house of it.
Well, then looking back on your life, what have been your major accomplishments? And don't be modest here. I mean, what as you look back, what from your perspective, what do you think have been your major achievements?
I haven't really analyzed that, Jerry. I guess just holding it together and being married 50 years. That doesn't happen too much anymore.
That's true. And
And
raising two
my
kids.
boys both have graduate degrees.
Mm-hmm.
They both have master's degrees, and they both have families. And we hear from them, but not a whole lot. And
Where are they living, Malinda?
one lives in New Mexico, and the other in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of on. We're in close touch, but like my husband said, you can't have it both ways. They're either independent or they aren't. And that's a success. I feel that hopefully I've met obligations and or expectations of me when I've been put in different positions. I'm sure that I have a lot of friends. I'm sure there's people that disagree with my approach to different things. You don't always hear about those. So, but I've never had any fist fights with anybody. I tend to respect opinions of others, but I feel that that's because I've had a lot of opportunities to hear a lot of different viewpoints and religion. It is a big world out there.
How do you feel about having come back and taken over the management of the Thomas N. Berry and Company? Was that, we talked about that earlier in our interview, that surely that was a significant experience for you in your life?
Well, yes, we left an area that I really loved living in Rochester, New York, and the Finger Lakes District. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of our country, of America, really. It's very distinct. It's very agricultural. A lot of people don't know that. One of the 5 most, because all the glaciers came through there for the Finger Lakes. So we left a lot of friends and acquaintances. I think any place you raise your kids, our kids were there from birth through high school. We didn't move around. And you just have a lot of friends from when you have kids the same age and all that. So all of that was left behind when we moved here. But we still have contacts. In fact, we were just invited last summer. We went to the Adirondack Mountains, stayed with friends we knew from Rochester we'd done things with. So we've kept up with some, and they've been here, and they love Oklahoma. So I've had a lot of good times. I have a few times that weren't so easy. I don't really have any regrets, and I really rarely look back. If I had lived in Cambridge, Mass, and Rochester, wanting to be in Stillwater, you want to make the best of wherever you are, whatever happens in life, and you got to live with your decisions. I think that probably I've been reasonably successful with that.
You talked earlier about your trying to use the right words. Not your leadership in the women's movement, but your activities at the time when women were coming into leadership roles in business and in non-traditional areas. Was that important to you in your life? Has it been one of your significant things you look back on and think about?
Well, you are where you are at your place in history. You don't have a choice when you're born or anything. And you either are part of it or you're on the fringe. And I was never intentionally in the dead center of the women's movement. But because of my education, both having a college degree and the advanced degree at Harvard, I think it did open up opportunities for me at a place and time that was a bit unusual. I was the first woman to join the Harvard Business School Club of Rochester. I was their first female president. I also represented them on the National Harvard Business School Association Council. Served as secretary of that. That's a whole nother series of things. And again, that was in the early 70s up till, about 77, kind of in that period, in the 70s, early to mid 70s. So I would say that by education and just being interested and accepting those challenges, sometimes they were uncomfortable, but I didn't think much about it. I found the women's movement changed men more than it did women. I mean, so, oh, hello, you're here. And so I've always I've just tried to accept the opportunities and do the best I can. I just tend to kind of do different things, don't I, when you look at the whole resume. I've had a lot of nice experiences. Hopefully I've fulfilled what was expected at that moment in time.
Maybe following question, your comments, Malinda, reflecting on your legacy, quote unquote, how do you hope people remember Malinda Berry Fischer as you look back?
She did what she said she's going to do. Or what she was asked to do, or what she accepted to do. Ask is not quite the right word. But that I accomplished what I was there to do at that point in time. The kiss of death is when you start getting self-congratulatory. And I learned that one. That's straight out of my father's mouth. He said, you're in big trouble when you get self-congratulatory. So thank you for telling me that I have achieved. I hope to achieve a bit more in my old age. Just what, I don't know. Even if it's just being a good grandma. I talked to my 3.5-year-old grandson, Malinda Berry Fischer, in South Carolina, and I said, "What are you doing, Breton?" He said, "I'm doing." And I said, "Well, what have you been doing today? What activities?" He says, "I just don't remember." And I thought, that's hysterical. I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you something, Breton. You're going to have to start remembering if we can talk, because I won't know what you're doing." "Well, I don't remember today." And I thought, well, I'm going to teach that child. So see, I have a mission.
He's
going to have to remember. I said, "Did you eat breakfast?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, did you play with your truck?" "Yes." I said, "Did you go outside?" "Yes." I said, "Well, those are all things that you've done today." He says, "That's right. That's what I'm doing." So I thought, I have a mission here. I got to make sure that little grandson knows what he's doing every day. And Dick said, I was telling Dick this, and he said, no, you did it with your own kids. You had to stop. Don't start now again. So the truth is, Jerry, I don't know what I'm going to be doing if I can't manage somebody else, right?
Well, I was flashing forward to your conversation with Dick this morning. Dick, I'm going to do this, and this.
He'll get a kick out of this tape that you're doing, because it just entered my mind. Well, we don't know. We have this pop sounding, and we think we've got a little problem in our water heater. And I said, I think there's a gas leak. And he said, "I'm calling him right now." As I'm walking out the door, I said, I don't want to blow up. So far we haven't. But, sometimes there's a noise in your house that you just don't know quite what it is. So we think we better get it checked.
Linda, what do we leave out? Some things that surely we've just touched on a few things in your life, but are there some things we'd like to share that would help us understand, your life a little better, that you feel are important? Is there something we haven't covered?
Well, I think that in all of my travels, I've always said that I'm from Oklahoma, north central Oklahoma. And people kind of look at me. You'd be surprised how many people have never been to Oklahoma.
I wouldn't be.
And, you go, and I had the opportunity to go through Leadership Oklahoma and went all over the state. And that was a great experience for me, coming back into the state. And, you go out in western Oklahoma, and they call it the crossover state. and you look up in the sky and all the airplanes are crossing over and everything. So, but I've always been proud of being an Oklahoman and all the history that I've been part of, and Oklahoma State's been a big part of it. So hopefully, just as all of us that are pure Okies hope to, you don't find too many people that don't like living in Stillwater.
Sure.
It's still a little town in its own way, but it's a good place to live, and I think the university makes it that way. So as far as about me, I guess I've come back to home base, and we're not planning to go anywhere or to leave or return to New York State or anything, because this has become home, and Dick really likes it here, always has, or we wouldn't be here. And he really likes the golf, and once in a while he does a little ethics at the university. He's actually an ethicist in addition.
Oh.
And there's ethics to a lot of things in life, whether it be medicine or engineering or, you name it. And so he looks at that from a legal perspective, but hasn't done a whole lot of that recently. But so I think that we'll just continue to try to make Stillwater and whatever we're called upon to do the best it can be, and participate in whatever ways that we're asked to do, providing we feel we're the right ones to attempt it.
Back to your roots. You're still in Oklahoma roots.
Yeah, so I don't see that it's just sort of transitional. I don't have any big plans for the future other than I'm going to have a granddaughter, which will break the locker room mentality of my household. We have 2 good daughter-in-laws, and so that'll be fun. And whatever comes my way at OSU, if I feel appropriate. I'm getting a little more selective on where I spend my time, as I think all of us do. But I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing about all of your project, not just what you interviewed with me, because it's great to at least get it down, and it's nice to have all this fancy equipment.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.